approve the minutes of the June 3rd, 2020 TVPOA board meeting.
One time.
Motion made.
One time check.
Second.
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 For both
Comments?
days.
No, she came to us once to do.
I saw one correction
You paid her.
under the rec
Hey,
department
she
section.
only did
That was
whatever.
Wait, hold on.
Tony that gave the presentation, not Dan.
No,
Did you get
you
that?
pay her for the boat,
There,
Cataldi, C8.
then you only owe her 1 day.
Could you please mute your microphones?
Yeah.
so with that
Yeah.
correction, are there any other corrections to the minutes? All in favor, right hand? 7-0. Okay, then the next presentation, Winston, is COVID-19 operations.
Yes, Mr. President, give a COVID update on the operations of Tellico Village. In our meeting yesterday, the managers reported that cleaning supplies are getting a little more scarce, gloves, cleaning supplies, stuff like that. According to some board members, they believe that there's plenty out there, so I'm going to pass along the word on where to go. The Tugaloo and Kahiti pavilions are still shut down due to the governor's executive orders and the health department rules. We cannot open up facilities unless we have manpower there to monitor and monitor social distancing and cleaning, sanitizing, and we do not have that. But there is limited use of those on a first come, first serve kind of use at your own risk basis. We are not monitoring that per se. The pool usage is still limited. We hope and are going to strive to have coming soon some open swim, but as of right now, the pool usage is limited to exercise and lap swim. And we still are restricting the use from guests. Restaurants are open and running at about 75%. We still do not have the okay from the governor's executive orders to use bars, but restaurants in the a la carte business is running about a 70 to 75% level. The catering business, which is very good for the village food service revenues, is way down because of social distancing and COVID rules. A lot of weddings have been canceled. We are hoping with the relaxation of these rules going forward and a lot of brides and so forth trying to make up that we will have a good, strong second half of the year. But as it stands now on our food service operations, we are taking a hit there because of the loss of the catering business for the first 5 months. Golf operation is one of the closest amenities to running normal that we have. We still have limitations on large group play. That would large being defined as greater than 50. The golf staff has done an excellent job of reorganizing these large groups and getting them off to play in different formats than we used to use last year. So they, hats off to the golf world for looking at new ways to try to handle that. Wellness center, Welcome Center, the demand to see Tellico Village, visitation that's generated through internet and through marketing programs, marketing shows, the demand is still high. The problem we're having is we do not have enough property owner tour guides to show the people around. So we are limited somewhat, and but it's still a good sign. I think that there is a lot of interest in Tellico Village as a community in which people are looking at for their next phase of their life. Public Works is running pretty much normal. Although that operation is non-amenity, it's a very important function, and they're fully up and operational. There's a lot of catch up in different areas that they're having to do where they got behind during the COVID, the early stages of the COVID-19 shutdown and so forth. But they are catching up rapidly and dealing with most of the ongoing operational things and taking good care of the village. Admin office is running pretty much normal. We still have the normal meetings that take place in the admin operation are not taking place. We've just now started to have a few. We have to be aware of those meetings. We still must practice social distancing. So our table in the conference room, you know, after you get past 6 or 7 people, you have reached your limit around the table, and then you space people out into the room. It doesn't take long before you have exceeded capacity. So we have been very limited, but hopefully the regulations will relax somewhat and we can get back to normal in that. But overall, we've noticed more use of the Dropbox in the admin operation. People just drop their payments off and never come in the building. But the front windows and ACC window and Public Works windows are all open and there for questions and property owners' needs. And that concludes my report. Mitzi, did you have something you wanted to add to the report?
Sure. I would just want to reiterate to the board and the audience that the management team, along with myself, are constantly reviewing these governmental guidelines, along with our president, Rick Blau, who has been a key player for us. But our objective all along has been just to get everything opened back up. We want to be as normal as we can without breaking any of the rules. But I did want to say I appreciate the property owners who have been patient and understanding with us, and we are most definitely looking forward to getting back to normal operations.
Amen to that. Okay. Does that complete the report on COVID-19?
Yes.
Yeah, Pat, go ahead.
Thank you. My understanding is that TOCA is controlled TOCA Pavilion is controlled by Food Services, Andy.
That's correct.
Reservations, et cetera. Tougaloo, Kahidi.
And by the way, it falls under the food service outlines in
Yeah,
guidance.
right, yeah. And Tougaloo and Kahidi and our two playground areas are controlled by us. Staff.
Yeah.
So what we've done, because the governor's guidelines say that we cannot open the playground equipment or meeting spaces like that, we have put barrier tape around them, correct? And signs. My understanding is that those signs and barrier tapes are being removed. And I brought up last month in the meeting that there are people that are taking photographs of our compliance. They do record the information. They do report that to the proper authorities. And every one of our operations is subject to being shut down and closed if we do not comply. I want to make it very perfectly clear to everybody that the tape is there because of a compliance. We're open because we're adhering to the compliance. And if it's removed, we need to make certain that if you see somebody removing it, that you politely ask them not to, and that we adhere as a community to these guidelines. Otherwise, we're subject to shutting down this entire operation, including golf, pickleball, meetings, restaurants, and everything. It's very important that we comply.
Good point. And one thing I'm going to add to the COVID discussion is I know everybody's waiting for July 1st and they think a lot of things are going to change. I believe there's one thing that will not change until there's a vaccine, and that's the 6-foot distancing rule. And the recommendation also that people wear masks in public places when 6 foot is not possible to do. So if you're hoping that's going to happen July 1st, I think you're going to be in for disappointment. So with that, it's yours.
It's my turn.
Yeah.
All right. As I mentioned at our last board meeting, I have invited Keith Sanderson, who is a member of the Watts Bar Ecology and Fisheries Council, and he is here to give us an update on their efforts to keep Asian carp out of our beautiful Tellico Lake and the Upper Tennessee River Basin.
Well, thank you, Carla, for inviting me and the board for listening to what I have to say on behalf of WBEFC. I also want
Keith, you have to be right up on the microphone for people outside the meeting to hear you.
Okay.
There you go.
And I want to talk, thank those who are watching on TV. I noticed when I looked at the past television streaming of this, there was between 300 and 400 people usually watching. So that's really great. I think that's a benefit of one of the benefits. And I'd also want to thank the Boat Club and the Cruising Club for their backing. Discussion points, we're going to talk about, for our TV audience, about who we are, the leadership. We have some bad news and good news. I'm going to give you the bad news first. Talk a little bit about House Bill 2705. There's a new TWRA director, and a couple other topics, the May meeting, Facebook stats, and a request from State Rep Griffey. And what you're looking at is wanted, dead or alive. In case any of you ever see that critter or anything that looks like them in the lake, contact the TWRA. They have anybody who's on the water, including commercial fishermen, sports fishermen, looking for those guys. And next slide, please. Okay, about Watts Bar Ecology and Fishery Council. It was established in 2017, and it's a stakeholder organization, meaning the members are residents of the area and have a big interest in the health of the Tennessee River Basin, particularly the eastern. They were originally founded not so much for carp, but other invasive species. We're riddled with them. Some of you may have heard of the zebra mussel. That's making its way upstream. Pretty soon you boaters will be cursing them because you'll be finding them in your water intake systems. And those of you who irrigate from the lake will be cursing them because zebra mussels will get up in your intake for your pumps and create all sorts of havoc. And most recently, of course, it became interested in the Asian carp, particularly the silver carp, because they will destroy or can destroy the ecosystems. Some parts of the Mississippi River, 90% of the biomass are the Asian carp. Needless to say, that doesn't leave much room for anything else. We're working hard to enhance and protect the ecology and the economy of the Upper Tennessee River system. Next, please. Okay, a little bit about our leadership. Dr. Timothy Joseph, founder and president. Dr. Joseph holds a BS in education, a master's, and a PhD in either biology or a related course. He's a freelance technical writer, former high school teacher. He's written hundreds of technical papers, but he's, in this day and age, a true Renaissance man. He's also published 5 books. They range from 2 fine literature books to 1 book of verse and poem to another history. So he has the rare talent of being objective like a scientist or passionate like a poet, which could be very useful in this. Next, please. The bad news. Pat Megan, Carl, the legislative executive assistant for Janice Bowling, let us know on June 15th the time, I can't even, that bill in progress is going to be held up until December 2020. It had primarily for the COVID virus. That's because of the recess they had. And that is not the best thing. And that's a reminder that a lot of issues, not just the fish, are being held up by the virus, but a lot of other important activities. In this case, of course, because they don't care about human activities, they may or may not wait for us to catch up with them. But that just explains is the bill has to go through government ops, first in the Senate before being referred to the Ag Committee. Good news, though. Next slide. Okay, we have bipartisan support in Congress. We got 4 Republicans, 2 Democrats listed above. They sent a letter to Jim Cooper and Steve Cohn, Peter DeFrazio, the chairman, and Sam Graves, the ranking member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. What they're asking is that as they go through the Water Resources Development Act, they would urge them to include language, now this is very important, to provide the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with the necessary tools to study and address the spread of the Asian carp. Then they go on to explain the fact that this species is aggressively moved into the Tennessee and Cumberland River. On a side, while we're just talking about stupid fish, which I think people sometimes look more at as a nuisance, these carp have the ability to destroy 80% of the freshwater ecosystem in the United States. That's the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River drainage system. So while there is a lot at stake, and a lot of other bodies are looking at this. So next slide, please. Okay, House Bill 2705 in the House and its companion bill, Senate Bill 2690. They seek a 10-member Asian Carp Commission to work on the Asian silver carp issues facing our state. Dr. Joseph has volunteered to be on the commission. As of just before the meeting, haven't heard anything. I think it'll be another week or two. We ask you to get back again and help keep your local state senators and representative aware of this issue. It really does help, and you'll see why. Next slide. Okay, I guess it's the one after that, but that's all right. The new executive director of the TWRA, Bobby Williams, is knowledgeable about the Asian carp issue. And this is important because it's going to be partially his leadership that helps with this. They have, now how's this? Aquatic nuisance species as a title. Cole Hardy is their new aquatic nuisance species. He's primarily concerned with the Asian carp. He has a undergraduate degree from Iowa State at Ames, and graduate degree in biology at Tennessee Tech. He worked a few years in Florida, and now he's been hired to come up here and help us. WBECF FC is trying to get a meeting with the new exec director and rep, Griffey, who's our Tennessee State rep. Why? Because of the study that's to be completed by June 21st. Notice that date, June 21st. That's just the date to get the study completed. Now, it's our belief that for some reason, these fish won't wait just because we're doing a study. And now, they may wait because there hasn't been a good breeding year for them or some reason like that. But we have no control whether or not. And that's why our main issue again is to try to get a lock at Watts Bar temporarily closed. Keyword temporarily. And if you look at the dollars, it's maybe $100 million at most per year versus $1.2 billion on negative economic impact if these things get up. And it's sort of like almost a hurricane warning or another natural disaster that you know is going to happen, but you don't know quite when and where it's going to happen. And what you can do is prepare the best you can, and to debate whether it's going to happen is not going to get you out of trouble, out of harm's way. And of course, the funding for construction will have to be provided by Congress, which means with all the money being spent right now for the COVID-19 virus, could be a tough task. So again, we're going to be asking, keep the information going, let your legislators know, both at the state and the federal level, that this really concerns you, because you know, we moved down here not to sit. Imagine if we couldn't go out on a lake fishing or boating right now with COVID-19 virus. We just as well live in the city. Of course, if we golf, that's the last thing. And even me would have to take up golfing, I guess. So, okay, next, please. Oh, and then several agencies are going to have to take a look. So even though 2021 is a date when the study, that's it. Okay. There was a TVA meeting in May. The May, here's something interesting. They got 30 letters received from the public. 15 were on the silver carp. Now the numbers aren't high, 30 and 15, but the percentage is 50%. All the board members were sent, that's the TVA board members, were sent a copy of the Dr. Joseph's 3-minute Asian carp video. And I think probably all you here at the meeting have seen it. And if you haven't, it's at their website. And those in the TV audience or streaming audience, if you haven't seen it, we'll have the website up at the end of the presentation. The president and CEO of TVA said they are the lead agency as far as making a decision to close the Watts Bar lock. So that'd be a real good reason to keep the pressure on them, positive pressure, not negative. And then Pandora Vreeland, who I think you probably all know here, wrote a letter on and an email expressing that waiting until June 2021 for a decision is perhaps foolhardy. She urged the TVA to take the lead and try to do something. And again, it's a few $1 million that it would cost to temporarily close the lock. If you take a look at the studies on the traffic through the locks, it's very small. And you know, it seems odd that we can't close the lock here on the Tennessee, but the senator in Minnesota got a lock closed permanently on the mighty Mississippi up in Minnesota. And there's some symposium that the TVA was going to have. They still have a plan, but again, because of the virus, we don't know when it's going to be. Next slide, please. Okay, the Silver Carp Tennessee Facebook page stats. The video viewing time has been a total of 28,000 minutes. And the wanted poster, the reach has been 48,000, over 48,000, and shares over 3,000. Next, please. And one thing about that is if you look at the graph, it was going like this, and then we got to, I think, late March or April, and it just flattened out because we haven't been getting information. The COVID-19 has taken interest away. So now there's a request from State Rep District 75, Bruce Griffey, and they go to the Finance Committee next. There's a $4,000 fiscal note attached to the bill, and the TWRA is trying to get an alternative private funding. So there's not an excuse as far as this bill is concerned. And they're looking for funding from corporations. I mean, if we can, anybody has any contacts with the boat builders, the tackle manufacturers, the marinas, I mean, these people, their businesses literally depend on the ability to navigate and recreate on the water here. And they're sadly underrepresented as far as what they've done to help raise the issue legislation-wise. So we're going to see if that can happen. Also, I mean, nobody would be upset if the village wanted to consider donating $1,000 or 500 or something. I think it'd be a way to make our presence known. If we, you know, there's talk about wanting to show our leadership in the area. It'd be good for publicity also, and centered and focused on, you know, taking a leadership stance as far as this is concerned. Next slide, please. Okay, I had resources you can go to for those viewing. The website for WBEFC is wbefc.org, strangely enough. There's a 3-minute video at the website. You don't even need the rest of that /video silver carp threat prevention, because once you're at the website, you can find it. There's also a 26-minute video there, and it provides in detail the economic impact as well as the some of the science behind the barriers. And the COVID-19 virus has overshadowed the need to continue working to stop silver carp in Tennessee. Silver carp and other invasive species, they're not going to wait. We must continue to raise awareness and stop them, and demanding that Watts Bar Lock be temporarily closed until barriers are installed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. And I would like to reiterate, since he suggested that we continue to put the pressure on our elected officials and government agencies, all of that information is on the Tellico Village website at tvpoa.org. When you click on the news tab, there's an Asian carp section to click on, and it includes all of that contact information, as well as sample letters, links to the Stop Silver Carp in Tennessee Facebook page that has a lot of good resources on it as well. So be sure and check our website for all of that information, so you can continue that letter writing campaign and keep these crazy fish out of our beautiful waters. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate you coming.
And one other thing, there is, if any of you ever have watched the TWRA TV program Wildcast, Wildcast number 181 has an interview with the new invasive nuisance species director. It's pretty interesting. One good thing that I learned is that they're supposedly good to eat. So. But you can't catch them, you just got to have them jump in your boat.
There you go. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. Okay, next up is a report. We're down to advisory committee and liaison reports. And the first one is the Government Affairs Advisory Committee, and Ray Byers and he's sitting in for Susan Kirk. So can we summon him to the room, please?
Did he spray out? Did he spray that down?
I don't know if he's, oh. Ray? He's not in here.
Oh. Okay.
Hi, Jim.
Can't tell with his mask on.
Yeah, we all look the same.
It's that silver hair.
No.
He'll be here.
Ray will come.
He was here earlier.
Downstairs.
We dismissed him.
Right.
Hey, Rick,
Yes.
question for Carla with respect to the Asian carp. Carla, what have the local mayors done, or have they not taken action to put pressure on those who need to have pressure applied to get rid of the carp?
The mayors have taken a role, and they mostly are working with state legislators who are then working with federal agencies and legislators. But yes, at all levels, they are aware of the issue, and many of them have appointed people in their offices to basically handle letters, inquiries, and any kind of pressure that they can put on the federal agencies and legislators to help us with this issue.
So is there any kind of report out to the taxpayers as to what they're doing, or is it kind of just handled within their organization?
I don't know of any report. I can check on that and find out. And if I discover that, I'll have it added to the website, to that Asian carp section, and also report back to the board on that next month.
Thank you.
Cool. So as I said before, this is Ray Byer. Ray Byer is on the Government Affairs Committee, and he's going to give us an update on what they've been up to.
Thank you. Everybody can hear me, I hope.
You gotta get real close to the
I
mic.
have to have it close?
Yeah, rock star close, right?
'Cause,
So
yeah, we're-
everybody can hear you.
Rockstar.
Outside, yeah,
Yeah, we're broadcasting to the outside world, so you gotta be,
spray it down good, Mitzi.
Spray me as while you're at it. Make me sanitary as much as you can.
Pull it close, right?
No, I can hear myself echoing.
That
so I-
doesn't matter. It's
that doesn't
outside.
matter.
It's outside.
We've got people on the
Anybody out
outside.
there who's watching, raise your hand if you can hear me.
Yeah, they
Nobody can
didn't
hear
pull
you.
it close.
I'll be swallowing this thing next.
That's right.
That's the idea.
All right.
You got a thumbs up, so now.
I'm going to go through a series of things we have done. Then I'm going to do some things that we have added, some things we found out since then. This is our first chance to really do an update for you since we've been quarantined. The first thing we're going to do is the voter registration initiative we've been working on since the beginning of our committee. We've placed registration forms in many locations in the village, in the library, POA office, CHOTA, the Yacht Club, and the Welcome Center. There have been forms for that. We have presented to new villagers and to HOA meetings about voter registration and voter initiatives. There's been articles in the Telegraph in both September and in February. And voter registration flyers will be distributed in July. We've been attempting to find some people to help us with that, but so far we have been unable to find help in getting the distribution of that. Question.
No, comment. Tell them why you're keen or you're onto this voter registration stuff.
We're on the voter registration stuff because we, as a village, have done a very poor job of being represented in voting. The number of people we have voting has been abysmal, much lower than it should have been, and we're trying to get more people registered than we have in the past. Part of the reason is when you look at the political makeup of the community, because it tends to be more red than blue. A lot of the blue folks don't vote, even though they should. Many times because there isn't a candidate on the ballot, and we're trying to find a way to ameliorate that problem as much as we can. And we've been talking about that and how we get more people involved. That's why we've been doing interviews on an ongoing basis of various candidates. We've talked to candidates for the school board. We've talked to the candidate for the clerk of courts, both candidates before that. We have an interview coming up with Dr. Manny has requested to be interviewed by us, and we're doing that on the 27th. And we're going to be continuing interviewing various candidates for offices, information to the electorate, to the people in the village about those candidates. And that's the biggest reason that we've been doing it. We're going to continue to do that because the turnout has been, it's just not what the people should do. Of all the people we have, you've got less than half the village registered, and of that, you're only getting 24% in the last election. And we need to find a way to increase that.
So was that the local elections that you're primarily talking about, or?
The last ones we had were local, so we're working off the last local ones. Off the last presidential, you had a good turnout, but the village has grown immensely since that period of time. So we're going to try to do more with that. We've had presentations on Carp, that our committee had. We had the United States Congressman Burchett in, and I think some of you were in attendance at that, which was, I think, an eye-opener both for him and for us, because he has been back to us several times now because he suddenly discovered the village is here. And the interesting thing about the village in Loudoun County, we have a property value of $444 million of assessed value. That's a lot of money. We give $8 million to the county. That's a lot of money. We don't get anything back. That's the county. I said it once, I'll say it again. We give $8 million to the county. We get back $25,000 for the fire department, $50,000, something, maybe $100,000 if I throw the sheriff in. So there's $7.5 million that goes into the bank account of the county. And the people in Tellico Village don't get a return on their investment. You need to think about that, folks. And that'll come down to the position at some point in time. How do we fix it? One of the reasons my committee exists is for us to work on a way to fix that. So there's a realization in the county that we're not interlopers who flooded this land and took away property, but we're simply people that live here and want a better way of life for us and for the people around us. Let me add to the people around us. We've been doing a study on volunteerism in Tellico Village. Study isn't quite finished, but we have rough numbers. I'll give you the rough numbers today. We've talked to every committee and every organization we could talk to that's in the village. The value of what those folks have done for the county is over $1 million. In hours spent in volunteerism, in product given to kids, toys carved from the wood carvers, you name it, there's over $1 million of value given from the people that live in this village to the people in Loudoun and Monroe County. There's almost no money ends up coming back into here from that volunteerism. It's almost all an outgoing piece of business. So it's important that everybody keeps in mind that we're a vibrant group of people. We're not, and I'll use a phrase Bruce used in a meeting earlier a couple of weeks ago. No, we're not from here. We're not Tennesseans, but we're here because we wanted to be, and we support the community. So just because we're not Tennesseans doesn't mean we don't care, we don't give a rat, or we're not willing to be helpful. We are outreaching and doing as much as we can. Mr. White.
Not to interrupt you, Ray, but I've noticed, and I would like for you to clarify this for me. I've noticed that when I talk to elected officials, whether they're in the county or, like you said, Mr. Burchett, they know how many people in Tellico Village voted, and they don't necessarily know who we voted for, but they know the percentage of population that voted or participated, and they bring that up. Am I getting that feedback correct from them? Do you guys get that feedback?
No, that's true. They specifically read, did you or did you not support me in the last election? For example, the county assessor, in our interview with him, and we interviewed the assessor, and we've talked to him several times, he gets elected in Loudoun County, but he gets elected from Tellico Village and Avalon. He knows where the votes are. So the people in Tellico Village and Avalon elect or give the majority of their votes to that gentleman. That doesn't happen with Buddy Bradshaw or some of the other people. They haven't gained the vote. Why? A lot of it has to do with presentation. Part of it goes back to red and blue. Keep in mind, the blue votes in the village don't vote in the general election if there's not a blue on the ballot. So they don't vote, period. They don't vote for Buddy or for anybody who's running against him or for anybody else. They simply don't vote. That needs to be addressed, needs to be fixed, and we're working on that. That's going to take some time to do, but that's a big part of the problem. In the now, we're going to get a really good turnout in the presidential, trust me. You almost aren't going to have to do anything except down ballot. In the interviews we've had with the school board, we were less than thrilled with the candidates we've seen so far.
Right.
A lot of the people in the village won't even vote, won't go that far down the ballot and vote. Bruce?
Would it be safe to say that we have a lot of power that we're not using? That if we were to vote, we could put people in office that are supportive of us, and the support that we're getting or lack of support could be turned around if we put the people in office that support us.
If we were willing to flex the muscle that this village has with 8,400 homes and a number of people could be registered in the 15, 16,000 range, you could control who gets elected to most of the major offices out of this village. Remember, you're $444 million of home value. You are second only to unincorporated areas. You're more than Lenore City and Loudoun and Greenback and Philadelphia as far as money's concerned in total. So yeah, there's a lot of people should be voting that aren't voting.
Ray, just if you could give me a quick tutorial procedurally. I understand when you go to the voting booth, you have to declare red or blue in your terms. So if you are typically a blue voter, if you go for the local elections and there's only Republicans, you would have to declare as a Republican, correct?
That's only for primaries.
Only in the primary.
Right.
In the general election,
Okay.
but in the general election, if the only candidate is a red candidate, we need to find a way to convince blue people.
Then, okay.
There are two candidates
Yeah.
running for sheriff, as
Then
an
that's-
example. They're both Republicans. One's better than the other, folks. So swallow hard and vote for one of those two, because they're going to take care of you or not take care of you for the next 4 years. That's an education process we have to do. We
Right.
haven't done it yet.
And that, I think that's where I'm kind of going with you
Yes.
on this, is the fact that you need to educate everybody that, yeah, you're not going to usurp your vote in the general election if you are truly a Democrat, and because of that, you're choosing not to vote rather than voting for the best of what you have in front of you.
Which is why we need to do
Yeah.
a better job of education, which is why we're interviewing all these candidates. I mean, we're going to interview the House candidates. Burchett is unopposed, so we're going to interview. There's two candidates for the Democrats. We're going to interview both. There's 15 Republican senators and 5 Democrats running for Senate. We're really not going to bite that off unless they ask, because anybody in a room, whether Republican or Democrat, name 3 of the people running for the Senate on the Republican or Democratic Party. You won't be able to. Although Dr. Manny has asked to be interviewed, so we're going to interview him on the 27th, which will be the first time we've done that. And I've watched his television commercials. It's going to be an interesting interview, to say the least.
So Ray, can I ask one more question on that?
Sure.
Are you guys going to go so far as to recommend candidates?
We have talked about that, and we're not there yet. No, I will take that back. Y'all have a friend in Lowell Russell. Don't ever discount what he has achieved in the first term as a first-term state representative. He's done some pretty darn good stuff for us and continues to be, and he's very close to the Speaker of the House and very close to the Lieutenant Governor. He's a good person to know. There's a fundraiser handled in the village We had over 250 people at the fundraiser. It was a very successful event. I'm trying to be careful, but I have difficulty keeping my big mouth shut. The previous representative before Lowell Russell was not a friend of the village. You may think so. People may think he's the greatest thing since sliced bananas because he gives free air.
I think,
And that's what, no, wait, and he gave free air to every time he talked about us and didn't spend any of it. We didn't get anything back in return. With Lowell Russell, we ask and he delivers. Our committee's been invited to the House, to the floor of the House, to visit with him and be on the floor and be introduced as the committee from Tellico Village. We couldn't go because of coronavirus, but we will be going back. We've built a relationship. That's the type of thing that we should build a bridge on everything we do. Bruce, you had a question?
or comment, I guess. They have discussed your point, should we endorse someone? I think basically where they were leaning at first, and I don't know, I haven't been there recently, is, I mean, they talked about educating people as to what each candidate stood for,
Right.
and then let us form our own opinion. But it's, if you lay it out there that says, for example, this person did boom, 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 boom for the village, and this person has not done anything but said they might, then who are you going to vote for? You should vote for. You know, so
Yeah,
I think
that's actually their charter, is to educate and then let people make their own decision.
And again, to Ray's point, and this becomes the hard pill to swallow, both for the red side and the blue side, is if you look at that candidate, and that candidate has shown a historical record for supporting Tellico Village and our future, and that $8 million and that $444 million, when that person shows that they've got that record, and the Government Advisory Committee publishes that, and then the other one shows that they do not have that record, they're not necessarily going to come out and say, vote Democrat or vote Republican. But what Ray's saying is sometimes if I'm hardline Republican or hardline Democrat, I better swallow the pill if I want my $8 million to be spent properly. Because it affects me and my future and all of the people in this community. And it will be a hard pill to swallow, but it's the right thing to do for the community.
Yeah, we've met with on the board. I mean, we've gone to TRDA meetings. It was the first time we'd ever been represented at a TRDA meeting. It's an interesting experience. We learned a lot. We've been to county commission meetings. We've been to the Committee of 100, which is a very good committee. Originally, when we went, it was presented to us as this is an economic development committee. It's really not an economic development committee. It's a committee where information is shared and good things happen because of the sharing. I mean, they bring in $17,000 a year. You don't do economic development with $17,000, but you do it with goodwill. And particularly in that room, you get goodwill. When Susan represents us at that, she goes, we now present every other meeting good news on Tellico Village in Loudoun County. Used to be there were just 4 cities would stand up and do that. Now there's 4 cities and the 501c4, us. And it has opened some eyes that we start talking about that. I mean, when you've got stories from people in the village that say, I was in this community and I went in the store to buy something and they said, where are you from? And I said, Tellico Village. And they said, please leave. I don't want your business. That happens in Loudoun County. We need to find a way to fix that. Now, the question will become long-term, and this is going to be for you guys to think about. We're working at trying to build relationships locally and at the state level. If we are unable to get past in a reasonable period of time, the good old boy network, and there is a good old boy network here, then that's the way it operates. I'm sorry for anybody watching me, we have a good old boy network. If we can't get by that, stop spending your resources trying to fix that. Go to Nashville, talk to the speaker, talk to your representative, because let's be honest, if I get in front of and I lobbied for a living for 8 years for Ford Motor Company. If I can get in front of a representative and say, I give my government $8 million and I don't get anything back and that's not fair. That resonates awfully fast. And that's a number you should remember, $8 million, and I don't get anything back. $8 million, and you don't care. If you care, show me. Because my village is certainly showing you, my village is spending in volunteer time and effort over $1 million in effort a year. And there's no return on that investment if I'm asking for help in other things the village could use some help with. Now, I got two more things I want to do, and then I'm going to get out of here because you got other stuff to do. We talked about the Asian carp. We talked about our TRA. We did the volunteer hours. Mike Campbell, who's our assessor, who you all may or may not know, as of June 20th or earlier, he had a meeting with Susan and provided this information, which you may or may not have. The assessed value of improved property, lakefront property in Tellico Village as of 6/12, $702 million. Improved property, lakefront property, Tellico Village, $702 million. That's not up there. Assessed value of unimproved waterfront property, $321 million. These are Mike's numbers. Watch this. The assessed value of all property in Tellico Village, now 444 million's up there. $1.7 billion. $1.7 billion. New assessments coming out in 2021. Everybody gets reassessed in 2021. I'm giving you a number you haven't seen before. That's more than double what we're assessed at now. That means it's going to be a heck of a lot more than $8 million next time around. And we won't get anything back unless we're willing to stand up and say, enough is enough. Questions?
So tell me again, I'm sorry, I guess I didn't get, I got the 1.7. What was the difference in the other two numbers that you said, the 702 million and the 300 and some?
We start with $433 million. And then the waterfront property is what was done before. This is what Mike is now saying. The property, all value, the assessed value of all property in Tellico Village is $1.7 billion. Waterfront property is 702, and unimproved waterfront property is 321. The rest is property not on the water.
So he's saying that
You
that
said
400,000 is current, but next year it's going
Yep.
to 1 billion.
Yeah.
Meaning your property tax is going to go up.
Well, and to be honest, we've interviewed Mike, and I'm a fan, just based on his transparency. And it'd be fun if you people had the assessor in and said, "Hey, tell us about how you assess property. It's worth the lesson," and what he talks about. He also talks about the houses being built in the village now, and some of the smaller houses, and difficulty he has assessing and what they're being sold for. Think about that.
So, okay.
Here's a $320,000 house. Assessed, maybe it can be assessed at 320, but it's selling for 350, and I can't assess it at 350.
So just so I'm clear, I'm sorry, I just want to be
No,
sure.
go ahead.
$444 million
That's-
total assessed value today.
Right.
That number is going to 1.7 billion?
From the numbers he gave to Susan, yes. Most of the value of the property going up is on lakefront.
That's over 3 times.
In 1 year, it's.
No, you're not assessed every year. The new assessment is done in 2021. That's when the official assessment is finished. Is in
When was the
2021.
last assessment?
It's every
Do you
3
know?
years.
Every three.
Every 3 years.
That's hard to believe.
So wouldn't you like to run a business like this, Ray, where you got $8 million coming in, you're worth $1.5 billion, and you pay nothing for it?
That's
It's
right.
all profit.
And I don't have to listen to a word you tell me because you don't have any power to give from me.
No, none. Wouldn't that be nice? And the other thing is, if you go back and look at the last election that the mayor was elected, which is where also Lowell Russell was elected, you look at the raw numbers of the total number of voters in Loudoun County, that elected the mayor and elected Laurel Russell, you will find that if this village had voted, you could make anybody mayor, representative, council person that represents us for the whole entire Loudoun County. If we vote, you will say who's going to hold office. There's not enough voters in Loudoun County to counter our vote. But what do? You said it earlier. We don't vote.
We don't vote. No, we
Steve,
can.
you had a comment?
Yeah, just a question, Ray. Typically, as I understand property taxes, you start with, first of all, the fair market value of the house. Then it gets assessed to 25%, and your tax rate is applied to your assessed value. So when I look at these numbers, I see $444 million of assessed value. To me, that's not fair market. That's at 25%. So when I look at the $1.7 billion, that's fair market. You take 25% of that, that gets you back down to about 5 or 6 assessed. That's where I think the discrepancy is between the 444 million.
I agree, and that's at first look, but remember, that's as of this year, and we assess next. So we don't know where it's going to go. And the other issue that Mike did raise is assessing new houses. He's having difficulty assessing new property because of the price they're selling for versus the quality of what's being built versus what it's being sold for.
Yeah, I think we need to run that down to ground. I think the 444 truly is assessed value, which is 25% of fair market.
Right. So you probably should be showing apples to apples there, so you don't
We can go back.
totally
We'll ask
scare
Mike.
people.
We'll ask Mike how that
I'm
comes
sure you
out.
don't want to do that.
But
Well, the
that's
total assessed value would be 4 times that 433. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's 1.6 billion now.
and that's not. And you got to see where it goes for next year.
Yeah. So it's not like your property taxes are going up
Basic
4
point
times.
is
No.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, so property tax will go up a percentage.
But your real
But
point
keep-
is
but keep
it's
in
8
mind-
million. It's getting closer to
Still
9
$8
million.
million. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But keep in mind also on property taxes and on taxes, you're finishing the jail, but there's at least 2 parks being talked about that haven't been decided how that's going to be paid for, and a couple other issues that are out there that are going to require more money to pay for than you have now. So there will be in front of this commission I know there will be a request for more taxation at some point in time in the next 12 months. There's no way they can continue it at the rate they're going.
And typically they turn to that great big pink thing on the map that says Tellico Village Piggy Bank. Got it.
And like I said, it's an $8 million piggy bank.
Steve?
There used to be state laws that while your property gets reassessed, there is a cap as to how much your property taxes can go up in a given year. So if your property value assessment went up 20%, your taxes wouldn't go up 20%. The tax rate on your assessed value would drop to get you to the statutory maximum on the increase.
Well, and the other thing, and when we talked to Mike, and I think it's worth doing, because he said he'd be more than happy to come and do this. There's a process by which you can appeal anything that you get for a tax increase on assessed value. But it's a very precise way of doing it. And he's willing to come and make presentations on how you appeal to him or anyone else to get your taxes done. And we think it would be nice, we talked about this in our committee, to do a workshop where he's available to provide information on this is how you appeal, because he, as he said, he says, I don't control this. This is a state edict. It is very tightly controlled on what you can do and what you can ask for and the timing that you have to do it. So I think it would be good if, as a committee, or even as a board, you say, why don't we have a day where the assessor provides information to the community as we go into 2021? Because most people don't even know there's an assessment coming in 2021.
And so your point to all that is, yeah, we provide an awful lot of money to Loudoun County, and your charter for your committee is making sure that you're getting the word out to all of us to vote so that we can be in more control of that.
If we can get 12,000 people to vote, of what I'm going to guess is roughly Yeah, we should be able to get, if we can get 12,000 people to vote, we can make a lot of changes. But
Yeah,
again, as I said before, if it doesn't work locally, if you just can't move the dime locally, then don't waste your time. Go to Nashville. I know you'll get an air in Nashville because you're a big taxpayers and elected government officials outside of the county pay attention to things like that.
Yeah, and you're right about that, Ray. And frankly, all the progress we've made in the last 3 years has been in Nashville, not at the local level, because that's a deaf ear. Any other questions for Ray? Thank you, Ray.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Thank you for not throwing anything at me.
No, wouldn't dare.
That comes later.
No. One time I threw something at Ray and he'll throw it back. So be careful.
Okay. Next up is Jim Hockey, reporting on progress on the Aesthetics and Environment Ad Hoc Committee.
First off, thank you for having me.
Again, you got to be right up to the microphone.
Right up to the mic. How's
That's
that?
good. That's good.
It's a pleasure being here, and I also appreciate the work that Sue did to get me on the docket for this afternoon.
All she did was send an email to me.
Did she tell you something?
Hey, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. All I know is magic got taken care of. We won't worry about the details. But a little history, I think it would be important that this committee genesis started with the Long Range Planning Committee activities over they met for almost 3 years. I was invited to one of those sessions to talk about environment, aesthetics, etc. And I remember Mr. White being there and asked me a whole series of questions. So in this year, board made a decision, and in February 20th at an ACC meeting, your president came. I happened to be there, and at the end of their routine approval of lots and houses and all that, he charged the chairman to form, I call it an ad hoc committee, not reporting to the board, not an advisory committee, but reporting to the ACC. And that's very significant and very important. In addition to that, he laid out, and Rick, you will probably remember some of this, this is not a committee to create a whole bunch of changes to the Blue Book. You are not charged with changing the Blue Book. You are charged with educating people. Now, in their great wisdom, the board may take some of these ideas and deal with them in a different manner, but it's very important we are not a committee to generate changes to the Blue Book. My own opinion is that if you're going to have something in a Blue Book, I come from an engineering background, or write a specification, you better enforce it or don't write it.
And that was the theory behind the Blue Book revisions.
Yes. And I think that that's important. A lot of people don't understand that, but it's an important and significant thing that needs to be brought up. So now we start a little bit of coronavirus activity. On March the 3rd, Steve Trudnick, the chairman of the ACC, called a gathering of people that were interested. And we had a very interesting time. We talked, we debated. And having been at the ACC meeting and Steve being there, we laid out the direction of the board as communicated to us by your president. Some people didn't like that. They are of the opinion we need to rewrite the Blue Book, redo it, maybe hire some police as enforcement committees. And we made it very clear to them that if that is your goal and that's what you want to do, there's another location for you to work. I'm not sure where it is, but it's not on this committee. The other thing that we formed and talked about at that time was this is a working committee. This is not a feel-good committee. Every committee member will be tasked with an assignment. They will deliver the assignment. We will have schedule. We may not meet all the schedules, but we will. This is working. This is a working committee driven by education and knowledge. So in the first and only meeting we've ever had was on March the 17th, where I was selected as chairman. I guess I talked too much, and I stepped out of the room for a little bit, and gee, I came back and I was the chairman.
And that's how it always works.
Yeah, I know. But when you get older, sometimes you have to leave and step out. So anyway, so that was the first and only time we've ever met. And next slide, please. There were people more than this number by a factor of 2 that wanted to be on the committee. We're very passionate about these things. We want to serve. And when we went over again at our first organizational meeting, it was number 1, we aren't here to change the blue book, and you will work. If you aren't willing to take a leadership role, drafting, learning, educating, helping people in the village, you aren't set for the committee. So a number of people, 7 to 10, decided that maybe they'd like to be a friend of the committee, maybe they'd like to be a liaison, maybe they'd like to play golf, maybe they'd like to do something else. These people that you see here are committed to the principles of this group and are working and are willing to work. All of them, if I can have the next slide, please, are adjunct people. I call them liaisons, including Steve, who actually wants to write one of the sections. We have Sue, who's been a very effective helper to the committee, giving me and others guidance, reading stuff, writing it, helping. Bart from Long Range Planning, and Carol Fenton from the Garden Club. All of these people are involved and are informed of everything we do. Most of the activities we've done to date, candidly, have been by email. Soon we'll probably set up some Zoom meetings, but we have not had any of those. Next slide, please. Organizations represented. Everybody on this committee is already heavily involved and working on another committee. My experience is if you find a person who isn't involved in working hard, pass them by and find somebody that's already overworked, and they'll do even more work. I had a long tenure leading a major church when I lived in Florida, and if you wanted something done, go find the busiest people you can find and they will get it accomplished. Don't worry about those that are doing little. So these members of the committee are also active in these organizations or are just residents. So we have a wide representation of people that are working. Next slide, please. Now came the time for a vision statement, because you need a vision statement and you need a mission statement which will follow this. I am not going to read this to you. You can read it. It's pretty clear. But this is the 15th, well, it was 14th when we first published, the 15th revision to a vision mission statement. Back in my career when this became popular, that every company and organization and subgroup needed a vision statement and a mission statement, you know, if you ask 10 people to participate, you'll get 30 different versions. So we went round and round. Some of these vision statements were 2 pages in length. Some were 5 words. Nobody is necessarily happy with what we have here, but they understand and they are supportive of it. We all got to participate. I came from a company where we had a participatory type of management structure for years and years and years. But when a decision was made, you saluted and you moved forward. And that's what we're doing. So there's our vision statement. And then that's followed by the next slide, how are you going to accomplish this vision? And that comes in the form of a mission statement. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the real issue is, and this is partly me, knowledge is powerful and you cannot take knowledge away from anybody, no matter what the situation is. How do you gain knowledge? Through education. And you can educate a person, they can become very knowledgeable, and then you need to give them the tools to apply that knowledge that they have gained and has been reinforced. I deviate just a little bit with a story that has stuck with me for a long time in my career, and it goes back to this poor person that lived alongside of a beautiful lake, and every evening he went out and he looked at the lake and he was starving to death. And finally somebody from the UN came along and they kept bringing him food and he survived. And they kept bringing him more food and he kept on eating the food. He kept eating the food and he sat there and looked over the beautiful lake. And one day a young fella came along and said, "What about what's in this lake?" They said, "It's beautiful water." And he said, "You know what? There's fish in the lake." And you know how the rest of the story goes, but by educating him, he gained knowledge there was fish, and then you gave him the tools on how to catch the fish. And pretty soon he had a real protein diet. He was able to supply fish to his family and fish to his village and ultimately fish to the greater community, and he started a fishing business. So our goal is to educate, influence, and recommend to all of us best marked management practices, practical things that you can do on an individual basis, then you can do them with your neighbor, then you can do it with the people on your street or in your cul-de-sac or in your community, and you build one person, one idea to 2 to 4 to 16 to 256. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, no problem. Well, while we're waiting on that, maybe I'll go to the next slide. The next one.
Yeah, just come down.
There we go. Thank you very much. We developed a long list of subjects that could be developed, or somebody thought if you had an idea, it went on the list. Then we created a long short list, and then I asked all the committee members and the liaisons, if they cared to rank what was important to them from a ranking system of, I just picked 1 to 10. And it was interesting that the number 9s and number 10s universally fell out. And the first 1, 2, 3, 4 universally were 1, 2, 3, 4 in some order. And then you had a grouping in the middle. Now, we had one other criteria. This may be a great subject to talk about, but if nobody is willing to lead that effort, it comes off the list. And we had one that everybody thought, oh, this is really nice, but nobody wanted to step up and lead it. So it's very nice, but if nobody's going to do it, it doesn't make the list. Now, these are placeholder subjects. Don't worry about the exact word here. And I look at this as chapters in a book. I am not an English major. I am not an editor. I'm just a lowly old civil engineer that wants to get stuff done. And we will write these in a format, but these are the basic topics that will be developed, are being developed, and as of close of business on Monday, I had asked all of the leaders of these topics to give me an outline They're in various shapes or forms, and some haven't quite made it yet, but we'll get there. Remember, everybody's busy, and I'm pushing, but many times I push too hard, according to my wife. So these are the topics that are being developed after a ranking system, and then people volunteered. I asked, give me your number 1 choice and your number 2 choice. Some even gave me a number 3 choice. And with that, assign people to be in charge. That doesn't mean they have to do all of the work, but they're, I would call them project managers, where probably they have a leadership role to develop. On this group, we have no great national, state, or local experts. We have people that have a commitment to make a change and do something. And from the ordinary resident's perspective of Tellico Village. So these are the topics: existing lawns and landscaping, stormwater management. I know this board struggles with that. I'm on PSAC, we struggle with it, ACC. It's the most difficult one, in my opinion, to write something about trees and natural vegetation, open spaces, solid waste, national certifications. How many are there out there? Some can have certification for your backyard, for your front yard, for 2 yards, for 2 lots, and all the way to total village certification, solar energy, and visual aesthetics. These names over time will change, but those are the topics that I believe you can understand. Next slide, please. So what are some of the scheduled milestones? I mentioned the first one on the far left was June the 15th. This is a draft subject outlines. I have, out of the 8 topics, I have 6 have come back. Some of them are excellent. Some of them need some work. Some people say, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me a little bit, and I'll try and help. June and July is to finalize the subject outlines and get them in a consistent order. Third quarter, publicize. At this point, we'll know better what we're doing and where we're going, and publicize the committee to the residents if, in fact, the ACC is comfortable with that, and from them, is the board comfortable with that? But we got to let people know what we're doing. We aren't a secret committee, but we aren't a visible committee. Fourth quarter of the year, and really the end of this year, and when we got our original charge way back in February, Rick said, don't you have the green book done already? It's already written. You can just put it together, but I need something by the end of the year. I'm paraphrasing a little bit what you said.
No, that's actually pretty accurate. Yeah.
Okay. And so,
I'm the guy that always wants to know when it's going to be done.
well, me too.
Yeah.
I'm a project program manager, you know. You'd be surprised what you can get done if you really try. You may not hit it exactly, but if you don't have a plan and you don't have a schedule, you never know where you are and you won't accomplish anything, in my opinion. But anyway, by the end of the year, to have a draft for ACC review, comment, see what they have to say and what they think about it, and then a draft available for this board, assuming ACC is comfortable with that. And then, in my opinion, the real work begins. An education program begins and continues forever, reaching 1 person, 2 people, 4 people, 16, 256. And if anybody wants to tell me what the square of 256 is, I'll be glad to accept that.
So we're talking exponential growth.
Yes.
I got it.
You got that.
Yeah.
So there's our overall, what we've done, what we're doing, and where we're headed. Next slide, please. Comments and questions, and thank you for your time. I was given 10 minutes, and I didn't want to overrun too much.
Yeah, I do, Jim.
You're pretty good.
I do, Jim. Going back to your recommendations in education, and you and I've talked about this. A number of us on the board have talked about it. As a property owner, I'm sold twice as much fertilizer as I need. A guy comes along, he does, and my lawn is beautiful. And in order to keep that lawn beautiful, my irrigation service comes along and they have me, and I'm a victim of this, they had me overwatering my lawn, which created moss.
Right.
literally moss.
And probably fungus before that.
Yeah, and it killed my lawn.
Yeah.
So anyway,
And then they'll charge you again, you need a new lawn.
right, yeah, but I'm doing that myself. So this one is to Rick and to you and to our attorney back here. There is no state or local or federal regulation to say there's a limit on how much fertilizer I can put out.
That is correct.
Okay, and then
That's why the
then there's no penalty.
committees to recommend and educate.
Right, and I'm getting there. I know I take a long time, turn a battleship on a dime, I know.
Right.
So at the same time, there is no incentive or penalty or otherwise if somebody sells me twice as much ammonia nitrate as I use and I over fertilize my lawn and pay double. So you're saying by educating the POA, the state, the local can't go say that's $100 fine. You've got to pay that because you over fertilize. Nobody can do that.
Correct.
But you're self-penalizing yourself by double spending. And the same with irrigation and the same with everything you're talking about.
Yes.
So for those people, myself included, that originally look at this and say beauty, aesthetics, then the people that violate that should be paying a price. But there is no
There's no
legal way
penalty.
to implement a,
No.
no.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's where you guys came along.
Yes.
And what I'm laying out here is that the people watching or the people that'll read this on the web or the people that hear about this and do the research to what you guys are doing and your committee members, you have no teeth to make anything happen.
That's correct.
But your teeth are in telling me I'm paying $200 a month more for water or for watering when it's raining or for over fertilizing. And you are going to direct us in your aesthetics and education to learn a proper way to do it or have an avenue to learn the correct way and save myself the money.
Absolutely correct. And it goes even beyond that, Pat. You're paying double for fertilizing. What does that mean? Your grass grows faster, so now you have to cut it at least every 3 days. You missed one, okay? And seeing your grass goes so high, I'll have to charge you a premium because it really clogs up my mower when you mow the grass. And then what do you do with the grass clippings? Oh, they lay all over my yard and they turn yellow. Oh, you got to bag it. Then I have to put it in bags. Then it goes to landfill. You can make a case really fast. All the people in the village are intelligent people, and you lay out what's of benefit to you. Now, there's side benefits. There's side benefits, protecting the lake, water issues, etc. But if you don't hone in on what's in it for me,
right,
you go no place.
Right.
So our focus, and we've started forming many education committees as we write stuff, because what I don't want to do is write a book and put it on the shelf in the library with a beautiful binding and nobody gets anything out of it. I could care less about that. I want you to change your habits by your choice, because if you chose to move here, you made a wise choice. Now we're going to provide you with knowledge through education and the tools to make a difference. And that's the whole theme of what we are in all of these areas.
Right, thanks.
Any other questions for Jim? Okay, we have a question coming in.
Oh, no, that's not, no.
It's prior.
Okay.
I could comment on that, but it's not in my presentation. See, everybody has an opinion.
That's a new job then for you,
Yeah.
Jim, so.
Things are a little slow right now.
Well, I
Well,
would
you want to
just,
join the Government Advisory Committee? I understand there's an opening.
yeah. But you don't live in Kahiti, but that's another story. So,
Yeah.
but I would just really like to thank Jim for his leadership on this committee. I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of content here. and herding cats, herding content, and all that is the magic to which making these things happen. And the fact that they have done all of this, as he said, without any meetings or anything else, and they are off and running, and they all know what their role is. So kudos to you, Jim.
Jim, you got to tell me how you did that, because I'd like to never have another board meeting.
Maybe not in this setting, but some evening I could tell you, I would be glad to share that with you.
It's going to cost you a glass of wine, probably.
More than that.
How about bourbon?
Hey, I have some fine stock.
Okay.
Well, again, thank you very much
Thank
for your time and for allowing us to do this. This is a challenge. We had a no committee with nothing in February, and we're producing product. And not because of me, but because commitment of people wanting to do what's right for their village. We all came here by our own choice, and now by our own choice, we're willing to do this. So again, thank you.
Now, again, your ad hoc committee is not closed because you said you've got people assigned to each one of those. And if there is an interest from the people that are watching this to say, I like trees or I like water, then they can contact you or one of your committee members and say, I want to join you on.
Yep.
So you're not closed, are you?
No, we are not closed. Okay. Just contact Jim Hawkey. I'm in the directory, and you can find me and call me. My phone rings 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year. And for about 18 hours a day, I answer email.
But it sounded to me like they better be willing to work.
You got to be willing. If you do not come on this committee, as we used to call my business, as a resume builder that says, oh, I served on this committee and that committee. We all know what that's like. You aren't going to get that on this committee. And there is opposition to what we're doing. I've gotten some, what do I want to call it? Very negative feedback already from people. They just have a different approach, and they can have their own opinion. Thank you. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Rick, before we move on to the financial report, we have a few questions from the audience on the last subject.
Okay.
So the first one is, who is the board liaison for the Governmental Affairs Committee?
Me.
Pat.
Pat White. So maybe you can answer some of these questions since we've already released the representative from the committee. One is, maybe this is not so much a question as a statement, but you may reply to it. We should not be using this forum for political advocacy. Unbiased support of voter registration is needed, but this has gone too far.
Yeah, and you recall I asked the question, he made a response. There's multiple candidates running. The goal of this committee is to lay out that interview process, and we're going to lay it out. And I've been in those interview sessions, and they're very enlightening because some of those people come in here thinking they're going to give us a political speech, and we're going to jump up and say, yay. And we say, we're giving you $8 million in taxes, and we get this back in return, and we on. And we then ask them specific questions. What is your opinion of us? Where do you stand? Well, this Government Affairs Committee is not stepping up to say, I'm endorsing Carla Johnson. We're going to lay out those paragraphs, and you're going to, as he said, decide based on what you read. That's why it becomes critical if you're red or blue, and this person over here is against your party affiliation, is 100% for Tellico Village, but your party affiliation is against Tellico Village. You've got some soul searching to do, because so it's not necessarily you're going to endorse the candidate, but you're going to lay out what that candidate is saying they're going to endorse for us. Then it still becomes your choice to make that call.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Ken Litkey. He says, I'm not clear here, and you kind of answered this already, but he says, I'm not clear here. Is the Government Affairs Committee going to make a recommendation for TV homeowners for voting or not? If not, what are they doing with the interviews? They're apparently not reviewing all candidates.
He also explained that like the Senate candidate, what do we have? 15 candidates running some astronomical number. The debate, and the decision has not been made on this yet, but the debate within the committee is if you have 15 candidates and you have front runners, do you just interview those? The ones that are going to get the perceived majority of the votes. Then you have the trailing, like in a presidential election, you might have 40 people running. There is a qualification for those people to be conducted in the debates, et cetera, et cetera. So part of this solution is, without coming up with the answer now, like he talked about Dr. Manny, if a candidate reaches out to us and says, Tellico Village, I'd like to come in and talk to you, oh, by all means, whether they're a front perspective vote getter or a trailer, it doesn't matter. We're willing to talk to everybody and still not endorse the candidate, but to find out face to face what that candidate perceives us as and what we can get a commitment that they will do for us.
Excellent. And one other question, and it's not really a question, again, it's a comment from Cap Purvis, who says, one point which should be made is that the increase in value in Tellico Village has allowed the tax rate to be the same year over year. So while there is an increase in assessed value, we still haven't had an increase in tax rate.
And exactly,
that's true, actually.
And a number of us have talked to the Loudoun County officials and the mayor, and they're very aware that they have a great situation going on here with a large number of people that don't have a large number of children enrolled in the education that do not put HA5 down on the streets for us, or remill or repave, or have to fix sewer leaks or sidewalks or any of that, and take the money in, as Ray was saying, without expending it out. And they're very aware of this little gold mine that they have sitting down here.
Carla, are there any other questions from
That's
the
all
outside?
we have so far from the audience.
Okay,
Thank you.
Kevin, you're up for the finance report.
Do the microphone.
Well, you're really good at
You
that.
missed the mic.
You know, I may take you home.
All right. Well, I'm here to talk about how we did for the month of May. I will tell you from a high-level perspective, May was very much like how we finished April. So a very good month. What you'll see is kind of a big driver in the month of May. If you remember, for the last 5 months, I've been talking about the budget for HA5. That expense is sitting in the month of May. Jeff has obviously started the beginning of June. He expects to be done beginning of July. So that expense is going to get recognized mostly in the month of June. So it creates kind of a one-time variance that you'll see in a moment. So from the key non-financial indicators, we sold 5 POA lots this month versus a budget of 4. So we continue to have a lot of success continuing to sell lots. Our suspended accounts is only at 157, and I think I'd mentioned earlier that is pretty much the level at which we finished 2019. So even among the pandemic, suspended accounts have been very good. Total paying lots, we're a little bit above budget for the month, pretty much right at for the year. Headcount within the POA, we've talked about this several times. We've continued to have some open positions, mostly seasonal in nature, for public works and golf. And Chris Carter and folks continue to recruit heavily for those positions. On the public works side, property transfers continue to be strong. We had 37 property transfers for the month and 245 year to date. So we are well over budgeted activity on transfers. New home starts, we had 13 versus coincidentally a budget of 13. Little bit of a slowdown, but not much. We finished year to date right now at 74. I don't see any reason why that number won't continue at budgeted levels. Miscellaneous permits, we had 35 versus a budget of 35. And there again, too, a little bit of a slowdown when you look at the permits on a trend. But I think in the month of June, the activity kind of picked back up. Same thing with tank installations. And then on the water and sewer revenue, we continue to use a tremendous amount of water. And things get reflected there as well as sewer. And I'll talk a little bit about that separately. Golf has done a phenomenal job of kind of maintaining activity during the pandemic. We continue to see daily and prepaid rounds are basically right at budget. Annual rounds, as usual, they hit it out of the park with the number of rounds that they get in. And then the guest rounds were just slightly above budget for the month. So Chris and his team had a terrific May, and I believe June is kind of, Carla's nodding yes, that she would know, but I think June's activity is leading up to another good round of golf. I did have a request, and you'll see it in forthcoming financial reports. I'm going to add some more non-operating statistics as was requested by a board member. If you look at the unlimited, which continues to be an issue, and I know the GAC is looking to address pricing for that for 2021, but unlimited members after 2, we had budgeted to sell 120 memberships. To date, we've sold 211. So, that's a great thing. You want to use the amenity, but it's a double-edged sword. Unlimited member individual, we had budgeted 105. We've actually sold 128. So there again, it must be a great deal. Unlimited member for family, we budgeted 35, and to date we've sold 48. And then when you get into unlimited individual carts, we budgeted 6, we've sold 9, so that's relatively small. Unlimited member family carts, we've budgeted 4, we've sold 9. And then when you get into the private carts, individual, we budgeted 8, we've sold 9. Family, we budgeted 6 and sold 7. So obviously the issues that need to be looked at more closely are really the unlimited member after 2 and the other individual and family unlimited memberships. But overall, for the total rounds, you'll see in the P&L that is equated to a pretty strong golf revenue for the month. Now on the dock side, the leasing percentage for docks continues to be very high. As of 5/22, which is when the dock folks, I believe, get together, we had 4 open dock slips, 1 on E dock, 1 on F, 1 on K, and then only 1 on the A dock at Kahidi. And when I look at the report that just got generated on 6/15, that's down to 1 open dock in Kahidi A dock. So that dock leasing percentage is basically,
We're full.
they're completely booked. And as far as a waiting list, it ranges between 77 and 74 people on the waiting list. So
Kevin, do you have specifics on that? Do you know what size of dock that is open? The ones.
Yeah, hold on a second, I can tell you. Uh-oh.
He knows. Kevin knows.
Yeah,
He's
go
got
ahead, Kevin, tell her.
pressure's on here.
The 1 open dock, the size of that dock. It's in Kahiti A dock.
It looks like it's 10 by 24,
Yep.
is that correct?
Mhm.
Thank you.
And there are, how many personal watercraft slips open?
There is, as of 5/22, there was one PWC slip open on G dock. And as of 6/15, there were two.
Right.
And I believe one is, I could tell from the email, I think one is kind of in rough shape that Public Works was going to take a look at
Yeah.
repair.
Yeah.
So again, on the dock side,
So tell me again how many people we have on the waiting lists?
it ranged on the two dates that I have, Rick, between 75 and 77.
So if you recall in the budget last year, our past criteria has
Right.
been 50% pre-sign up.
Right.
The docks that were, the slips, no, let me back up. The docks that we're allowed to install by the TVA requirements are 36 slip docks, 2 left in Tanasi Basin and 1 in Kahiti. So there's 3 total. So we've already exceeded that 50% capacity, which lends support to the spreadsheet that the dock captains put together last year to show we were going to be out of slips by June of this year. But the wave attenuator came along at $200,000 too, so that was deferred. So,
And I stand corrected, Rick, that's the move list. The deposit wait list is about 23. And that's consistent month to month.
it's 2 personal watercraft and 21 slips on the deposit wait list.
Correct. 21 are at Loudon and 2 are at Kahiti.
Right.
So I'll begin reporting that additional detail in the future as we go through that. Obviously, our RV slips, we continue to have open slip there, and we did not report any rec revenue for the month, so I did not report membership numbers there at all.
Do you have a sense for what rec memberships are doing now?
I do not.
Okay.
All right, next slide, please, Shannon. So here you have where we stand May 30th. Our revenue is just a little bit north of 8.5 million versus a budget of 8.6. So we are within $80,000 of year-to-date revenue. On the expense side, our expenses came in at just north of 7.6 million versus a budget of 9.9. So we are favorable on the expense side, almost 2.3 million. And again, 977 of that is the HA5, and I'll get into the remainder of the other items. So overall, our net income year to date continues to be favorable, 842,000 versus a budgeted net loss of $1.4 million. So like I said, a very strong month. Next slide, please. Here's just the breakdown between the various revenue types. Obviously, assessments continue to be strong. I'll talk a little bit about golf and golf merchandise and late fees, but as far as the overall mix, has been very consistent. Next slide, please. Thank you. So on the assessment line, we're off by 12,000 year to date. Doesn't even calculate to a percent on the variance. Overall late fees, although we're missing on revenue here, when I get to the bad debt expense, you'll see that we more than make up for that. So that's not a concern. What's really promising is that third line of golf. The non-golf merchandise golf revenue is 854,000 versus a budget of 853. So he's within $1,000 of his golf revenue. On the golf merchandise side, they've had a good May. They picked up, I believe it's 22,000 in golf merchandise sales. They're looking to have a very strong June. But, that month of April, when we were kind of adjusting operationally to how the pro shops, they were closed and how trafficking would work, really put them behind. So we're looking at more of a full year forecast of what we expect that to be. Yes, Pat?
So the question is, we still have outstanding golf expired certificates
Yes,
that
we do.
we're honoring until what day?
June 30th,
June 30th.
except for the West Golf ones, which are December 23rd.
For the 2019 expired golf certificates till December, right? Okay, so on July the 1st, I come in with an expired certificate and I say, please, I forgot.
So sorry.
I would tell them to see Mr. Pat White.
Right.
And he will tell you no.
And Pat said he'd make good on all of them.
No, I didn't. No, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the inventory is up, the selection is good. You've got 3 pro shops to choose from. Go in, and if there's something strange there, then they've been known to order for you in advance so that you could pay for it in advance with your certificates. But on July the 1st, the agreement with all of the golfing community and everybody that we had input from, that June the 30th was the date.
How many more days?
I don't know, I can't add that high. 13 days, Bruce says.
13 days.
So you got to use them.
And to put in a plug, now is the time to shop your Tellico Village golf shops because they are still running the COVID 19% off sale on soft goods. So
Get it now.
go now.
There's an
Yes.
advertisement.
And to add to that, to add to Carla's comment, they are also starting to order in some inventory again. So there should be a little fresher merchandise. So that's very good. On the rec revenue, year to date, we've got 218,000 versus a budget of 368. That 151,000 is exactly 2 months of foregone revenue. So, we'll be starting up the billing again, and that is exactly what we expected. On the water and sewer side, I'll get into the rate volume in a little bit, but water and sewer revenue was 1,451,000 versus a budget of 1,452,000. That $1,000 variance is basically a little bit lower warranty work versus the budget. On the installed tanks, here we continue to have favorability. We're 22 above budget. So if you refer back to the non-operating statistics, year to date, we're at 74 versus a budget of 52. So the activity in the village continues. I talked about the dock and RV revenue a little bit from a leased percentage, but our overall revenue is 289,000 versus a budget of 298. And that 9,000 is split between RV missed the revenue by 10.8, docks missed by 8.6, and then the gas dock revenue, I'm sure with increased boating and the nice weather, is favorable 10.6. So all 3 of those net to the 9. ACC permit, better than budget by 32,000, is pretty much all volume driven. Food service, another good story to tell. 114,000 in food service versus a budget of 80. That favorability of 35 is, it's all driven by the strong community support at Kahidi. And then other revenue, 241,000 versus a budget of 146. That 95,000 is made up of a couple items, one of which is the property transfer fee. And on the non-operating statistics, I referenced that we were at 245 versus a budget of 125, and they carry at a fee of 200 each. So that accounts for 24,000 of favorability just from the property transfer fee. I pick up 18,000 in additional interest income, and then there's 59,000 just a little bit north of that in other income for the final donation that we received for the Kahidi portico. So that's how we get to the within 80,000 of the budgeted revenue. Now, if you look on a trend, you know, you'll see on the expense side where that strong blip up. Obviously, that didn't happen. It'll shift 2 months out. But we continue to see some seasonality both in our user fees and kind of growth within our revenue for the year. And that's even without the 150,000 for rec revenue. Next slide, please. Now, if you go to maintenance, and I know this slide's a little bit small, maintenance expense for the year to date is just over $1 million versus a budget of 2.4. That is where the HA5 basically comes to rest. So there's 977,000 related to that timing. There's some dock repairs, which I believe have been spent this month, as well as that's about 72,000. Yacht club renovations, those funds I think were kind of put on hold pending, you know, the pandemic. On the salary and benefits, we're 299,000 favorable year to date, again driven mostly by the open positions. Bad debt expense favorable, 145,000, again tied to strong management of the delinquent accounts. Other things to call out are operating supplies. Here we're favorable 156,000, and that's primarily timing of about 100,000 of it is various kitchen equipment that Andy and Mitzi had budgeted, and going obviously with the closures of the facilities and the kitchens have waited with that investment. So some timing there. On yacht club management fee, this is another one that we continue to watch as AWE and the restaurants adjust their scheduling and service under the new protocols. Depreciation expense is favorable, mostly due to the timing of our capital spend. Cost of service, water and sewer cost of service, but favorable here. And I'll talk about rate volume that drives that. Tank installations, mostly volume driven. There is a slight mix within the tank installation piece. We do have a couple jobs that kind of ran a little bit north of the typical installation. And you know, when you look at the underlying labor and materials that go into a tank installation, year over year, there's not a significant increase in costs at all. It's mostly just driven by these outliers. And when I talked to Jeff Gagley about it, he's comfortable that, you know, as we continue throughout the year, those outliers will kind of regress back to a mean. So finally, on the golf merchandise cost of service, we're favorable, which you would expect with the lower golf merchandise cost of service. And then on other expense, that favorability is driven partly by some timing of consulting for 31,000, some accounting and payroll fees of 22,000, and then a gain on the sale of land related to some of the POA sales, land sales, for 27,000. So overall, that gets us to our 2.2 million favorability. And again, I think this month of June and July will rebound back and bring us back in line with more traditional levels. Here's just a graph of the net income trend. Again, the important thing to point out here is we really expected kind of a slower start to the year, and you know, fortuitously we've had a strong first quarter, which really helped us the last few months. So Then if you go to the next page, here on a trend, and I know it's small, but a couple lines to point out. If you look at golf revenue in April and May, you'll start to see a real strong ramp up in the golf revenue, which, you know, is again testament to the activity and volume that Chris is maintaining there. You'll see the line right below it, 22,000, another good month in May on golf merchandise. Right below that, you'll see 2 months of 0 for rec revenue. And again, that's usually about 75,000 a month that gets recognized. And then you'll see on the installed tanks, we had a very strong March and April and a little bit of a softening on the month of May. Again, that was right back to budgeted levels for the month, but we did see a slight downturn, but I think in the month of June, we'll see that pick back up. Other than that, on the expense side, you'll see a lot of the items on a trend have been very consistent, hence my comment earlier about May was very much like the month of April. Next slide, please. So here on this slide, it's basically doing a rate volume analysis on water revenue, water cost of service, sewer revenue, and sewer cost of service. Obviously, water revenue, we're favorable, a little bit unfavorable on the water cost of service. Part of that is due to a mix between TAS and LUB. Obviously, there's different rates that come into play, as well as volume. On the sewer side, sewer revenue, we're almost right on budget with number of gallons for sewer, and then a little bit of a rate issue. And I believe starting in July, you'll see a slight uptick. We have a TAS sewer rate increase that should go into effect that I'll be accruing for and you'll be seeing coming through. And that increase, I want to say, is about a 3% increase. So we are at $5.39 a gallon on sewer for TAS. So it'll be going up just a little bit from that. I talked at the very bottom at the rate volume, a little bit of the rate mix between TAS and LUB. And then on the volume for the water cost of service, the budget assumed a higher internal use / leakage. So in actuality, the loss there has really not been bad. So next slide, please. So here is a walk from the budget down to year-to-date actuals for both water and sewer and then installed tanks. You'll see the important numbers here on the far right. Our margin percent on the water and sewer was budgeted at 51%. We're coming in at 54%. And a lot of that is driven by a little bit of favorability on the water rate. A lot of the volumes tended to wash themselves out. And then on the installed tank, an important number to note is the higher install cost, lower tank revenue / higher tank install cost. That 86,000 in the cost of sales, that is the piece that I was referring to with kind of normalizing out as we go forward in the year. Next slide, please. I won't spend a lot of time on the golf revenue rounds report. I will direct you to the bottom right. So member rounds year to date, we are favorable 3,662 rounds. So obviously annual member rounds, both annual member rounds and after two, are favorable 4,340, and then slightly off 677 rounds on the daily and prepaid. If you go to the next slide here. Oh, one other thing I wanted to point out on the rounds, because it came up during my FAC meeting. You'll see total rounds year to date are 27,178. This time last year, we had 22,687. So, almost 5,000 rounds more year to date this year, even with the pandemic.
Kevin, have you noticed a correlation between the increased unlimited sales and the decrease in the prepaid and daily paid rounds?
Can you say that again?
A correlation between the increased sales of unlimited memberships to the decreased rounds in daily and prepaid? Like when you showed the rounds, you said there was an increase, right, in total rounds, but a decrease in daily and prepaid. Have you noticed a correlation between those two numbers?
I have not, but,
Okay.
I know last year Steve and I kind of did a deeper dive into that mix, and it's probably worth doing that again. I need to get to a deeper level of that analytic for giving Chris Sykes what he needs in the GAC, so they can make informed decisions about the price setting for next year too.
Right. Thank you.
Then on the guest rounds, here we missed the number just slightly by 160 rounds. Year to date, we had 3,140. And when I look at prior year, that number was 3,285. So this time last year, we were 53 rounds favorable to last year's budget. So I don't think, when Jim and I worked through the budgeted guest rounds, I don't think that, we changed a lot of assumptions that went into that number. I think a lot of the guest rounds are obviously driven by COVID protocols and then just demand on the T-sheets. Next slide, please. Now here we've got another area that's been impacted with the pandemic. We total cart rounds, so 3/4 of the way down on the page, are 26,495 year to date. So we are favorable to budget by a little north of 1,700 rounds. Prior year, we had 23,781 rounds. So we were behind last year's budget in our golf rounds. This year, we are by far well and above our budgeted cart rounds, which leads to, obviously, the total rounds. We're at 3,500 rounds favorable year to date. So even with that mix, the impact of the annual memberships, I think we were a little more conservative in how we were budgeting rounds this year. Jim and I were a little bit more detailed in the breakout of the types of rounds, which I think has helped kind of create a more realistic mix, which I think has helped us in the, where we're at right now. Any other questions on the financials before I get into Steve?
Kevin, if you go back to your rounds report, is there a reason why you have 0 budgeted rounds for rounds after 2 or 0 budgeted rounds for annual? Let's see, you do have annual unlimited, but under the unlimited after 2, you've got 0 rounds budgeted. So when you look at your variance of being up 3,662 rounds, your annual members after 2 account for almost all of it because you got 0 budgeted.
Right. I think part of that, Steve, was the level of detail. I was fairly new to the budget model for golf. And when Jim and I tried to add in additional types, I was able to get the 9-hole broken out versus the 18, since there's a price differential going into the budget this year. The after 2, I wasn't able to break that out and budget that separately.
Okay, well, I'll put some notes together and and get with you later on about some of these revenue generating rounds versus the annual, because obviously we've sold more annual, and this will get into what we price it out at for 2021.
Yeah, and that's timely, Steve, because I'm already working with Parker on the 2021 budget template development. So I'll just get with you separately. And just be careful, they are revenue generating rounds. They're just annual memberships. I'm surprised Mr. White did not.
They are a fixed annual revenue that must be analyzed separately than the individual revenue generating rounds that are in the budget.
Exactly.
So who determines the Steve, you mentioned the annual rate. So is that determined by the Golf Advisory Committee?
It's recommended.
Recommended to the board? Okay.
Yes. Any other questions before I get into the CFO report? All right, I think this part should move a little bit quicker than the numbers. I did want to report that we did receive a clean opinion from Coulter and Justice for our 2019 audit. We did have a lot of changes that I know Parker walked you through before, with changes to accounting pronouncements. All of that's been addressed. All the notes have been approved. And I believe, well, I know Beth has those posted now to the POA website. Our next step now will be to quickly work with Coulter and Justice on the 990 completion. And that time frame has been extended. So we've got a little bit more time, but I'd like to get that filed and done and out of the way. So you'll be seeing that coming soon. I did mention the HA5 work. Jeff did begin on June 8th in the Coyote neighborhood. He's going to continue through Chattooga and Malacqua neighborhoods for the rest of June, and then hoping to finish up around July 10th. When we did talk to Jeff earlier this week about progress, I believe he said he was about 25% complete, and things were going very well. The manufacturer had come out to do a site visit with the company that's actually laying it down. They're doing a very good job. So I think Jeff was pretty well pleased with how that resurfacing is going. Yes, Pat.
I'm going to ask Marty to speak on this too. Marty and I were blessed to be a couple of the first streets. I think Marty was actually first one to start, and I'm going to ask him to tell you why in a minute. But it is where I live, I'm on the end of an end of an end. So it's just a circle. So they will start on those outside edge circles and then work in. And for those people who live on those circles like Marty, they're going to come in and do your street, and you're going to be in there a couple of days because there's no alternative. You're just there. Then they're going to do a 1 lane in, 1 lane out with traffic control, and it was no problem at all. Did you have a problem?
No.
Okay. So what I found is that these people, and on the Telegram, you posted, Beth has posted, and it shows you a website, and it gives you a phone number if you need to call these people. And Marty, I'd like to tell you to tell them about your neighbor and what happened there. No, seriously.
Well, no, so seriously, I wanted to bring it up anyway, is that it was all about, he called the POA office just to be sure. He had to take his wife to have a chemo treatment done the day, they did us Monday and Tuesday, and on Monday afternoon, he had an appointment. So he called and said, okay, what am I going to have to do to better get out? And they asked what time his appointment was, and I think he says around 3:30. And they said, well, no problem. We'll do you first. So they were out on our street at 6:30 in the morning. And then our road was opened up that evening, by the time he needed to go, which was around 3 o'clock. And that was the same both days. So even though they publish 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., you can get out before that if they do your road first. But they were very accommodating, and he made sure he stopped and let me know that, hey, they were very accommodating, and he really appreciated that.
And quite honestly, for you and for me, it was a pain, right?
Inconvenience.
It's 2-day inconvenience, but I've got the most beautiful street now. It's just amazing. And I just wanted to update everybody so that you understand it's coming. It will be an inconvenience. If you have a special need, there's a number to call and they will work with you.
Toko's still waiting. What? I said Toko Co's is still waiting.
Well, they don't like you and they like Marty and I.
Okay. Shannon, next slide, please. I've got 2 capital requests to make the board aware of. The first one does not require board approval. It's more for information purposes. The funding request was for a walk behind beach cleaner. Chad is the manager for the project. The budgeted amount was $14,500. The requested amount is $14,285. Source of funds is unrestricted operating cash. It did not require FAC approval, although we did present that to them. The project justification is replacement for our existing beach cleaner, which has reached the end of its useful life. The requested machine is in stock and is what we believe to be a better design and ready for delivery to clean the beach daily. We did not go with the low bid for design reasons. So the clean sands bid that we went forward with was $14,285, which was recommended. The project is within budget, within the CEO's approval authority, so no further board action is required. And you'll see, there's attached detail to the device that they use to clean the beach with screens and et cetera. The second capital project that does require approval from the board, it's a funding request for a water meter changeout program for 2020. This is a continuation of a multi-year commitment to do the water changeouts. The manager on the project is also Chad Johnson with Jeff. The budgeted amount is $93,636. The requested amount is $91,314. The source of funds would be the Water and Sewer Reserve Fund. Finance Advisory Committee, they did approve this. It is not TBD. And then the project justification, meters provide a more accurate reading, resulting in better capture of revenue for water consumed. The 2020 project will replace 360 meters. HD Supply is the sole supplier of the master meter. And then Tellico Dirt Works will install approximately 280 of the meters, with the remaining 80 meters being sourced by POA staff. The first component of the bid, $79,315, is the equipment, and then TDW is $12,000. It's single source due to the compatibility with the existing meters within our system, and the requested board action is capital approval of the $91,314 with funding from the Water and Sewer Reserve Fund.
Okay, I need a motion to approve project funding of $91,314 for the 2020 water meter changeout program from the Water and Sewer Reserve Fund. I've got a motion. Do I have a second? I've got a second.
Steve has a question.
Yeah, it's on. Steve?
Mute, unmute.
Steve, you're on mute.
I was just seconding the motion.
Oh,
all right, thank you.
I have a question. I see that this is a single source bid because of compatibility. Are they the only ones? That's the only company who has meters that are compatible with our system? That's your understanding?
That is,
Kevin, at this time, that's all they have is the master meter that will be compatible with ours. We're looking at a couple of more companies, that tell us they can with our water meter reading system, but we're testing them right now. I don't know if that's going to pan out or not, but master meter is our meter. It is our reading system. So right now, that's what we're using.
So Jeff, as long as you're on the line, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I know that we've been doing these meters for a while. When will we have everything in the village on radio read?
We will have everything this year on radio read and be starting the cycle over again to replace the 10 and 12-year-old meters.
Okay. Yeah, I knew that part. I just.
Oh, okay.
I do. Jeff, this is not part of the tank install contract. This is a new contract with Tellico Dirtworks.
This is part of the tank install contract. It was a line item in there.
Okay, so this is still subject to the $25,000 limit.
Yes.
Per delivery order.
Yes.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? All in favor, right hand. 7-0.
Thank you.
Just a comment there is that it doesn't show it here, but based on what Jeff said, that 11,999, that's not a new contract. We have that contract in place. It's meters.
Okay. Next slide, please. So here's where we're at through the June 17th with the capital projects, including what you folks just approved. At this point, we've approved 27% of the 2020 capital plan. We're basically right at budget for projects approved to date. I know there's some variation, particular with like Sandman, but Chris still has the golf vehicle piece that he has not yet adjusted down. So we're in good shape with our capital. Next slide, please.
We have a question from the audience who's watching online with Top Purvis. He says, with $6.5 million per bank and only $1 million in HA5 to be paid and $200,000 for the wellness center roof, why don't you move $1 million into the repair and maintenance reserve?
I mean, it's certainly something we can talk about, but I'm not sure we're ready to make that commitment today because we have a lot of deferred maintenance projects and capital projects that are still on the books, but they have been deferred based on the COVID outbreak.
As I recall, Steve can give you the details, but we moved a substantial amount earlier.
Yeah, we did. We did that. I think it was $500,000, Steve.
Yeah, we moved $500,000 and instead of $1 million, but what we can do because of the 2.4 million we have in operating cash, which is about $1 million higher than typical, is when we start paying for HA5 and we finish off the roof project, instead of paying for that out of the R&M reserve, we pay it out of operating cash. It's the same thing. That way you don't touch your reserves.
I got it. Good point. Other questions from outside?
That's it for now.
Okay, Kevin, move on.
Steve's got his hand raised.
I'll wait till Kevin gets done. I got 2 questions on the balance sheet when he gets done.
Okay. Real quickly on a cash flow check, 2020 budget mostly funded from current year's cash flows. You'll see net income. The year-to-date variance that we've got of 2.2 million is flowing directly through for a projection of almost 2.9 million. And again, that'll adjust once we've pick up some of the expense timing items next month. Depreciation flows through here as a non-cash item. Again, we're favorable there. And then CapEx is pretty much right at expected projected levels of 2.8. So our net cash flow right now, as you know, i.e. Cap pointed out, we're pretty close to, we're 2 million favorable on, almost 2.1 favorable on year-to-date variance of net cash flow. So 1.7 million is the total projected, with, like I said, minimal drawdown of reserves. Steve, you wanted to ask a question about the balance sheet?
Yeah, two items.
Yes, sir.
First item is we're withholding payment for the roof until we get the legal situation squared away. So the question is, what account did you park the withholding? Did you leave it in accounts payable? Where is it booked? And you can send me, if you don't know, send me an email, let me know.
Yeah, I'll follow up with you on that as to what account on the balance sheet that is. What Rick pointed out, and that's a true statement, is Parker opened a interest-bearing account for that escrow per your recommendation. So I will get you what account that's in.
Yeah, okay. It may be classified as operating cash. I just don't know where it is. And the last one is, if you take a look at your prepaid expense, it's up 38% from where you were last year at this point in time. I'd like to know what's driving that significant increase in prepaids.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from outside? Okay, we've reached the other part of our program, and I have a couple of things that I want to mention. We've received a lot of questions about the Wellness Center roof. Obviously, it's not been done, and we are in the midst of legal proceedings as regards that roof. It's probably not appropriate for me to discuss it any further than that because it is an active legal case. Yes.
Rick, you might want to point out that even though we're under their legal limitations, we have done work up there to make sure that
Oh, yeah,
it's not destroying our building.
That's absolutely true. We have tarpaulin to the roof, and we've basically, lit a fire under everybody to try to get this done as fast as we can. So.
I have a point of order question. We approved a couple of new members for the Government Affairs Committee meeting today. Should we do that publicly and let people know who those folks are?
Well, we can do that. We have not in the past for those positions done it in public meeting, but it's no reason not to. So there are two new members. I guess I'll just inform the public. We've got two new members of the Government Affairs Committee as of today. One is
Carrie Brown.
Carrie Brown, and then the other is
Tom Lee.
Tom
Lee.
Lee.
L-E-E.
And so you can begin torturing them anytime now.
And also we have an additional opening on the Government Affairs that would be working with Ray and Carrie and Tom. And I don't want to limit this, but Ed Grolemon did a great job on there. And Ed has gone off to full-time employment again. He couldn't stand retirement. And he was from Monroe County.
He couldn't stand not getting paid.
Yeah, he was from Monroe County, and we're actively seeking a Monroe County Tellico Village resident to serve on this. We think it's very important on this board and the Government Affairs Committee to have a representative from Monroe County. So if you're listening and you're interested, please get with the POA staff, the number's in the book, and fill out your application and get it in, please.
Okay, and one other thing that I wanted to mention is the board has been discussing drainage issues now for well over a month. We are getting very close to adopting new procedures for the Blue Book that would require all new constructions to have engineered drainage solutions. I expect that will come forward to the board sometime in the month of July.
And to clarify, that's
Let me finish.
Construction.
Yeah. It would cover any time that a permit for a new house is submitted, it would have to have an engineered drainage solution. And oh, by the way, the final inspection would review that drainage, proposal versus what's actually sitting there on the lot. So, when we get that new language approved by the ACC, it'll come forward to the board for approval. So, are there any others?
Yes, I would like to update on the security gate Tugaloo blah blah issue. We charged the POA staff to go out and look at some alternatives that we could do without spending money. Mitzi has done a good job in tracking that with private and public security agencies. Either they don't want the job or it is outside of the realm of what we would want them to do. I'll just leave it at that. And right now, we've charged the POA staff to go back this month and research not only the cost of a gate, which would have to be substantially secure. Somebody could get angry and lightly bump it with a car with major expense, but it also has to be a gate that would not have passage around on the flat grass or around through the dog park. And we also have to be considerate of the cost of 8,500 plus ID cards to get in and the maintenance of those ID cards on a daily basis and the maintenance of that security area being accessible during the day and how much it would cost us to make sure that there is not a single resident that would be there that would not be allowed to use that facility because their card didn't work. That would be very upsetting to that individual. So we need to make sure that it works, it's reputable, reliable, and we're charging Winston and his staff to go out and find us how much that's going to be by the next board meeting. Okay, that was my other. Thank you.
Any others at this point? Okay.
Okay. Okay, so this question is from Cap Purvis. Did we borrow any money from the federal programs offered from the coronavirus?
Cap, I suggest you give me a call on this.
No, we have not borrowed any money.
That's all. That was the only question.
Okay. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Second.
adjourn.
Bye.
Third, fourth, and fifth.
Sixth and Steve.
He knows better than
That's what you call a traditional rhetorical question.
Hang on, we're not off the air yet.